there, and there. I'm assuming that means we are. I still have a little bit of learning to do with hosting, but I think
we're live.
Showing. All right, awesome. So then we'll jump right in. Welcome everybody to another exciting adventure into Frozen in Time. Today we have Rhonda Swan. She is an incredible force in this world. Like, she just holds this amazing space, really, really high pillar, and brings a lot of people together. And today we're going to dive into her story, learn more about why, and talk about realism, because it's one of those things that I don't think we get enough of in this world. And that's one of the reasons why Frozen in Time is so important, is because we get to go into being real. We get to look at those parts of us, because none of us have lived through Earth and didn't have a little Frozen moment. So today we're going to dive into that and figure out like what it is and help more people through it, through our own ways of how we got out of it. So thank you so much, Rhonda, for being part of this.
Well, Salamat Pagi from Bali on a Saturday morning.
I'm glad that it's a morning for you. That's so awesome that it worked out, that we were able to get into this.
I know, it's so cool. I would like to show you a little Bali, but it's kind of cold in my office and hot outside. So you can't see the ocean there, but it's sitting there. It
looks gorgeous. I've still never been to Bali, but I'm looking forward to it. I think next year I'm going to go to Bali.
Come visit. It's a great spot. Beautiful energy, beautiful people, you know, really good space to hold tight with. I tell you, during COVID, we were here and we literally felt like we were watching a movie in the world. We're like, is that really you know, we're like, wow, is that really going on over there? We're just like living our cool little life over here in our little island. But, you know, it's it's a beautiful place. We've been here for 8 years. So it's where we call home.
8 years. Wow.
Yeah.
I bet you know probably everything to know about Bali by now.
I mean, there's so much to learn all the time, but yeah, a lot. You know, we become everyone's travel agent. Hey, where should I go? What should I do? We're like, okay. You know, but Bali's beautiful. The people here are, you know, Hindu religion mostly, and it's just very grounded and beautiful. And it's been a great place to raise my daughter, Hanale, who's now 16. She was 8 years old when we got here and 1 when we left the USA. So she's a third country kid, they call them.
Wow. 8 years old, and the last 8 years of education in Bali, like with the forests. And I know that you guys believe in nature and connect to nature, so I can't even imagine. And I've heard Bali is gorgeous.
Yeah, getting busy, but still we're very connected to nature. We're in Uluwatu, which is in the Bukit Peninsula. So like Bali's like this, and there's this little peninsula at the bottom, and we live right on the edge of the cliff there. And stay very connected to nature. I mean, our family's a surfing family, so the ocean has to be within glances to see which waves are, you know, up.
That sounds incredible. So how did you get to where you are today? That's like a question I know that a lot of people are really interested in right now. And I kind of want to preface this really quick by just asking what it means to you to heal and what it means to you to like navigate or understand the word trauma. Like, what is, because everybody has their own definitions of what this means. It's always good to kind of get a baseline for that.
Yeah, such a good question. It's really good to see everyone too. Thanks for being here. And, you know, I'll be honest, I kind of turned away from the word heal for a long time, right? I thought it was super airy-fairy. I thought it was super hokey-pokey, right? Like, oh, everyone's healing. I'm like, just get to it, right? My Detroit background, I'm from Detroit. I was, you know, raised by a blue collar family. My dad was a fireman, and we were very practical, right? And if you know anything about Detroit or, you know, these cities that were like survival, like that was like, I learned later that the way that I learned to navigate was like survival. Like I was like, you know, just doing it. And I turned away so much from a lot of the spiritual, you know, side in the conversation, because first off, I went through, you know, like private schools and very religious background. And I started to poke a lot of holes in it, and, you know, nothing against anyone that would consider themselves religious, but I was like, this isn't right. Like I was always questioning. I was very curious as a young person. And here I am going to these private schools, and I've literally read the Bible probably 3 to 4 times. Now I realize what an epic book that is, right? The best personal development book probably the planet, because of the messages. But I was poking holes in the people that were sharing that message. And so I just started to turn away, and my family would drop me off at church on Sunday so I could get a better rate in my tuition, and my parents wouldn't go to the church. And I'm like, Well, that
Wow.
doesn't seem right. Like this isn't right. And so I started to question a lot of it. And in my family, my background actually, we're American Indian and a Native American. So we're Cherokee tribe. My great grandmother was kind of like a Cherokee Indian, like a medicine woman, right? And so when I grew up, I wanted to be so far away from any of that belief system. So I went completely opposite. Like I'm 50, right? So I was born in 73. And I was just like navigating, like, I'm going to be corporate. I'm going to be, powerful lady. And, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And my dad was a fireman. And I just didn't want to be part of that. So I navigated completely opposite. So most of my life was very like straight line. I was an athlete. I was a professional wrestler, a professional bodybuilder. I played for the women's U.S. softball team, the national team, all the way until right before we went into the Olympics. And so I was in that more of I guess that peak performance kind of lifestyle, right? Which denied so much of this conversation about healing and about trauma. Because I think more than ever, I didn't actually want to address any of it.
Yeah.
And this is when I really learned what trauma was. My biological father was a drug addict. My mom was 20 years old. My dad was 21. He was a drug addict. I mean, like there was this crazy stuff. Like he would steal stuff and put it in my, baby carriage, and then my mom's gets picked up and goes to jail. Like it was just chaos, right? So the first 3 years of my life, whether I remember or not, I now have learned that those were traumatic moments in my life that were like imprinting and patterning this survival mode of I don't have anyone to protect me. My mom was really young and I don't want to say weak because my mom is a freaking powerhouse, yet, naive and not strong enough to take a stand or have boundaries. And so I kind of grew up like I got it to myself. I remember being 5, like, don't worry, don't you talk to my mom that way, like that type of stuff. So I kind of grew up in that way. And then my mom got remarried to my dad as a fireman, and he was really strict and he had a absolute horrifying life. His dad did some really awful things to his sisters, and like there was just all those things happening, right? And we had I would say kind of more of I always am cautious with my words because I never want to insult anyone, but a really traumatic, challenging family life. And, there was a lot of, incest and molestation and things like that throughout all of our young lives.
Wow.
And so I got really hard.
Yeah.
And I probably a lot of people can relate to this. Like I got really hard. I put on the shell and I just became, I'm just going to do, I'm a survivor. No one's going to F with me. You can't penetrate me. And people have asked me like, years ago, how has that served you? And I'm like, holy shit, there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to carry.
Yeah.
There's so much to carry, and it wasn't until I would literally say, I heard the words healing and trauma, but I was like, that's not me. I'm fine. I'm fine. So many of us say that. And then our bodies are like heavy and, we're not connected. We're lovable, but we're not loved. We're not, with people. We're not really sitting and staring people in the eyes and loving them, and I had felt as if I was detached to my body, to humans, and I was just doing. So I was always that person that would do more to help more people so they could see what they could do. But in reality, I wasn't doing this with them to bring them with me. And so I know this is kind of a long answer to your question, but I started to understand what healing meant. Not even maybe 4 or 5 years ago when I said, okay, like I'm doing a lot of big things. I love my family. My daughter is amazing. We went through a lot of stuff in our life just to get to where we are today. But if I'm going to truly be not only an example for my community, for my family, like a woman for my daughter, I got to heal this stuff. I got to open Pandora's box that I'm so freaking afraid of. And I got to look at it. I got to address it. I got to see it. I got to see it for what it is. And so I started working with a spiritual teacher, and we did a lot of, soul retrieval. We tracked back on all these moments from the day I was born until, just, today, if you will, and looked at all these people, these things, and these traumas, right? And just started to give them a name and say, thank you. You made me who I am, and let it go. So healing to me means letting go of the fears and the opening the Pandora's box. That's really scary. And looking at your shadow side that has got you, like that's I always say my shadows, man, that's that gets me there, and my light, what keeps me there. And, just started to look in it and heal it and I guess unpack it, which is considered for me the healing, like looking at it face on and, and just moving forward. And, like traumas, I feel that they come through in so many different ways. And it can be just one statement that's made that creates some form of an imprint in your life. I mean, I remember one time my dad didn't know the things that he was saying. And he's like, oh, Rhonda's got this. And he said this word, this jug butt, right? And my dad was just pretty abrasive. And I was a runner, man. I was super strong. And I was like, I heard that and I thought it was negative. And from that path, it was like 13 years, I became a professional bodybuilder. I wanted to be perfect, 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 perfect. And I started creating this I am perfect, body so that I would be loved. I thought the more I looked perfect or was respected, then I would be loved. And so those are the type of traumas that I think that all of us carry. And even one little statement as a young person turns us into something that we may not want to be, or it's not our true authentic self. So I know that's a lot.
That was actually wonderful.
We don't pack all that.
You gave me plenty to work with here. I'm super stoked. So the first thing that you said that I think was like, whoa, right? Is you talked about the love aspect of it. And I think that this is one of those roots of trauma. I don't believe that you can experience trauma if you have enough self-love to weather the storm that's coming at you. But the problem is we're not taught that. We're taught from birth to look at validation externally. And we can go all through tons of research around this, but the biggest one that I think that we can all agree on is that when we cry as a kid, we get what we need.
Yeah.
What a reinforcement from birth. Imagine that. We cry, we express in a harsh or strong way, and we get what we need. Well, do you think that just goes away? No, we build on that and we fine tune it because we're very good at getting what we want. And so we continue to do that until eventually our persona, our first personality that we build by the age of 7 is a servant mentality. As long as I do this for you, you will do this for me. And that is an obligation structure that is going to cause us to fail. There's no way around it. We will fail if we need to do something for someone to get something in return. That is the most dangerous perspective that you can take on. And almost everyone has it at 7. Now, there are people out there are schools out there now that are emerging. Things are changing with this. And I'm really looking forward to the children of the next age. Your daughter is an incredible, incredible woman. You've done an amazing job with that. Amazing job. I want to talk about the cost. So the cost of having a template like that and pushing it forward for so long. 1, it weighs on the body. But 2, there's this thing that I call spiritual interest. And what happens is if I kick the can down the road, I start kicking another can down the road. I start kicking another can down the road because now I have to kick all these cans. And so the toll is exponential. So then there's this moment that I call the healing crisis. And it's when you finally do, and I call it the Santa sack of shit, but you call it Pandora's box, same thing. You take the thing that you've been lugging around and you throw it down. And usually you do this in a relationship. It's fun, right? That person didn't know what they were walking into. They're like, hey, you look really cool. Let's hang out. I think it'll be fun. And then it's like, and then the world just like shakes. And that person's like, what did I get myself into? And maybe they're good enough to be able to help you with a few of those things, but you expect them to do all of it. And again, it goes back to that 7-year-old perspective of, well, if I do this for you, you'll do this for me. So I will dump all of my stuff here and you can dump all of your stuff here and we'll love each other. Well, that's codependency and it's raw. So this spiritual interest that costs, when you finally did open your Pandora's box, did your world stay the same or did it start to fall apart in ways you couldn't have ever tried?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, this is the big one, right? Like here I am, this tough woman, masks are all over, right? Here, I own this big company. I'm on these TV shows. Rhonda's doing all these great things. Rhonda was this. All these masks came on, were on. And when I actually started to look at the masks, I'm like, oh my gosh, and take them off. I started to feel more free personally, right? Internally, like, oh my God, I can let that out. However, when I opened this Pandora's box, I'll tell you what really actually happened, because so much unfolded. And this was about 5 years ago. I started working with a spiritual teacher, and she started, opening these, it was like, the sliding doors, right? You're like, whoa, do I want to go in there? Oh shit. Do I want to, like, do I really want to see it? So we got grounded, right? And I was called to go into medicine ceremony with a shaman. And I sat, let's see, now it was in 2020, over hundreds of hours.
Here to do that in.
Yeah, right. It was perfect timing. I literally believe that all that happened for just the right time, because I had been playing and opening it, but I was doing it by myself. I wasn't fully telling, I was with my spiritual teacher, but I wasn't fully telling the world, right? My family was now understanding, because they knew what I've gone through. But Brian and I, my husband and I, are 25 years together. He's had some crazy traumas in his life. We're like, okay, he's from Chicago, I'm from Michigan. We're like, cool, we're just going to keep that down there, and we're just going to build like this, right? And that's what we did. And, amazing relationship. However, the moment I started opening Pandora's box and started taking off the masks, I realized I am not the woman that you know that I am. And you need to know who I am. And my family freaked out. Like, I was like, I'm going in and I'm going deep. I mean, I do that. I'm a Detroit girl. I go hard. So I literally sat hundreds of hours by fire with a shaman and peyote, and I'm praying, and I'm like, God, let's just let it all out. And for me, that was a really safe place to let Pandora's box out, because I just didn't know how to handle it or control it. And I needed to go through it myself, knowing that I had the support around me, but just going deep and going through it myself. And as it started to unroll and unfold, I'm inviting my family. My daughter did the first ceremony with me. And here I'm thinking, I want to do this because I want to be sovereign. I want to cut these ancestral traumas for my daughter. That was my intention, right? I'm going to go deep because I care about my daughter. It wasn't about me at the time. It was more about her. Like, if she's going to peel the onion, it's her onion layers. It's not mine. Right. So she actually came into the ceremony with me. And of course it turned into, me, like all the things that I needed to heal. And for her to be able to see, like, wow, my mom is going through this. But my husband, Brian, was like, what is happening? And I'm bringing up stuff like, I'm using now words like healing. I'm talking about shadow work. And he's like, like, this is not part of our world. Like, right. Because I was ticking at his Pandora's box, like ticking at the lock. Right. And slowly I'm like popping the lock, and he was getting nervous, and we were like having these family discussions, and he's like, are we losing you? Like, what's going on? I was like, no, you're gaining me. And it was about, and I think this happens for many people that decide to, go down that track and to start to heal and go down Pandora's box, is that their families they're afraid of it as well. And they're not willing to face their own masks, their own traumas, their own, start their own healing process. Thank goodness for us, we're such a close family that they're like, okay, Mom, we fully support you, right? And so now my family's coming into ceremony with me, and we're doing this work together. And it's like ugly cries, the messies. But what happened is the world started to open, and all of a sudden the true light was coming forward. And I felt less heavy. I was more aligned. I'm connecting more. And so it took a while. I mean, I did this for over a year. And it was hard to go, who am I now for my business? Like, oh no, like, how do I talk? I'm not this woman that just knows marketing, and this woman that knows PR and branding. I'm like, I'm going to talk like a real people to them. And if that was, like, this was like this, you go through this kind of trauma of figuring that part out, right? Because I can heal myself, but still be the Rhonda. Let's go do this, guys. We can do this together. And so that was a really big shift for me. And it took some time, but really, it was so much easier to be real.
Yeah. It
Just
doesn't
be
cost as
real.
much.
It doesn't cost as much, right? Like you're not hiding from the reality of who you are, whether you're showing up right now as a messy one or as someone that's got your shit together, but it's just going to keep cycling. And so that for me was like a beautiful process. My husband and I we're so close now. Like every morning, you know, we pray together every morning, every night. Like we never did this stuff before because my old trauma of religion and prayer was not what I wanted to even be close to, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, it's always a journey, right? We're always learning. And I see sometimes those masks will come up and I'm like, oh, no. There's no latches on that one, you know? But that's, you know, it was a big process and I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it every single day. You know, this is part of my healing is actually sharing this because I don't normally even talk like this to the public as much, right?
And that's the most powerful thing you can do, right? So one thing that most people don't get about masking is you're masking the light. And the reason you're masking the light is usually shame or guilt. And those are important to understand though, because the shame and the guilt creates the separation for you to see your own light. Because when you're in light, like if anyone's ever experienced this before, but you have one of those aha moments, it's so bright, so wonderful, so amazing, you can't recall it. You get pieces, right? And the reason you get pieces is because when you're in the light, you can't see the light. It's only when you look at the light that you can. And so we create guilt and shame to separate us so that we can look and see our own light. But there's this really powerful moment that occurs. And I call it the self-actualization curve, right? Because most people don't get this, but like if you actually look at a dollar bill, it shows the pyramid on it with the all-seeing eye. And everybody thinks that that's like this dark symbol, but it's actually the symbol of self-actualization. So belonging is the top of that pyramid. And the reason this is important to understand is because the eye is so high above it that you have to learn to fly. Everything that you understood around being on the ground is irrelevant to actually get to self-actualization. In fact, you actually have to let it all go. And so what happens is this real struggle occurs because everybody else that's on that pyramid doesn't want you to leave. And so they start to hold you, and then they start to tie you down, and they come up with every reason to drag you down the steps of the pyramid to get you back to the ground so that they're like, hey, well, you don't belong here anymore. And that's the struggle, right? And you mentioned that a little bit when you were talking about the block. Yeah. Because this is the reality. Anyone that you're around, the moment that you throw your Santa sack down, you open Pandora's box, whatever, usually we trade toys. That's why I use Santa sack, right? Because it's like, okay, I'm in a relationship with you. I'm going to throw my Santa sack down. You're going to throw your Santa sack down. I'm going to take this teddy bear. I'm going to give you this train. And sometimes we decide to take more than we give. And so what happens is we burden the other person with things because in this scenario, you're actually giving up your traumas to somebody else as a trade.
Right.
But then usually in a relationship, it's an unbalanced thing because a relationship is not really designed to succeed. This is something that most people never get, but this is the truth. Relationships don't succeed because they're built on the past. Connections do because they're built in the present and they can evolve. But when you're past thinking, you're using your subconscious mind to create reality, you're almost always going to fail. It's a setup for failure. And the biggest problem is that we throw our Santa sack down hoping somebody will take our toys. And that's never going to work because if they take our toy, they leave a hole. And that hole in our sack is going to get filled by a bigger toy because that's the law of the vacuum. That's how it works. So the thing about when we go into that healing crisis, and this is one of the most powerful things that you very well explained, is the fear is real. Everybody comes up with every reason why you shouldn't. But then you are like, but if I don't, I won't know who I am. And I know this is my choice now. And if I don't make this choice, I have to live with not making this choice.
And that
costs me more. Exactly. Yes. That costs me more because I'm aware that I'm not doing it.
Right. And that's when we recognize inauthenticity, right? That's when we're like, because it's like the moment that you see it, you can't unsee it. The moment you know it, you can't unknow it. So then now we're completely out of alignment with really who our true authentic self is. And, you know, and I know this because I'm speaking because I remember it going, I was so anxious all the time. And it was because I was totally unaligned. I was so unaligned that the words I was saying were not even at the frequency of really truly who I was. And I just wanted to get rid of it. I'm like, this has got to go. All of this has got to go. So I was so ready and willing. And I think that when someone's very willing and ready to let it go, and to know that could be that's my messy pile, that's your messy pile. How do we clean up our piles? That's what my husband and I did. We're like, okay, look, my husband's dad, passed away when he was 16 years old of AIDS. And it was probably one of the hardest times of his life, because here he was 12 years old. They live in a town of 2,000 people. And they were the Swans who owned the first variety store before Walmart, like the Swan family, right? So the Swan family had this mask on that they're this perfect family. And all of a sudden, Tom Swan is gay. And the Swan family's breaking up. And now these boys, my husband's brother and his brother went to drugs, and so did his sister. And he was young enough to go, I don't want to be that. However, that was so traumatic for them. So when him and I come together, I'm here, I got drug addict father, abuse and sexual abuse and all this craziness. But we both held our boxes together. We were literally creating almost like a new life, but it was kind of still built on a house of cards.
Yep.
Because it wasn't real. So the moment that both of our Pandora's box opened, we're like, okay, we're going to recognize those messes. And none of us want those toys. Neither of us. Like, you can take your toys over here. Let's clean those ones out. And let me clean mine out. And now let's start with a new bag of toys. And I really, truly, I know everything happens for a reason at the right time. But man, if we didn't do that, Jason, I don't believe we would be together.
Yeah.
Well,
one person can't open their box and the other one not.
Right.
Because the light, and that's what I was earlier talking about, is like the moment that I illuminate, all the guilt and shame between you and your light is going to illuminate too. And you have to come up with every reason to get rid of me, because I'm the problem now.
I want to see it. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
If you aren't willing, you will find a reason to get rid of the light in your life. And that's the biggest thing. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on, is because you're a lighthouse for the lost for so many. You're holding that light, you're shining it bright, and you're saying, hey, this is me. And you're so willing to get real. Like, this is not easy to do. What you're expressing, what you're sharing, especially with this community, probably like 20,000 people will see this video in the next few weeks. That's a lot of people to know very intimate details about you, but you don't have the shame anymore, because you finally come back into your light, and you don't need to be put out of your light anymore to see it. But the thing that most people don't get is that's an infinite game. You're not always going to be in that. You're in a stream, and every once in a while, that stream has a current that moves you over here. And you might feel like you're not in the stream anymore, but you're still in the stream. You're just holding on to a log. And that log is a story that you're not willing to let go of. But you eventually let that go, and then you get back in the stream and you flow again. And that's the infinite game. It's always going to be like that. There's never going to be a moment where you're so empty that nothing exists, because you're dead at that point. Well, actually, there is going to be a moment. You won't be in your body. You'll be outside of it. You'll be preparing for the next world. And that's okay. But in this world, you have density to stay physical, because you have to be able to relate. That's how time and space work. That's why matter was formed. So it's part of that whole understanding that, like, I'm doing this for me. I'm not doing it for anyone else. And I know I'm never going to be done. But also, I can celebrate the small ones. Every single toy that I give up into the light of God, or whatever choice that you use, that's one thing that isn't burdening me anymore. That's something I'm not paying spiritual interest on anymore. And it's not causing me to resent, because spiritual interest always creates resentment. It's actually balanced. The entire debt, like when you have a credit card and then you have like that payment that you pay, but then there's always more interest that's accrued than what you're paying. That's called resentment. You develop resentment instead. And that's spiritual interest. You're literally paying anytime that you're holding on to something in resentment. Your soul is gaining resentment, and your soul's stuck in your stomach, right? So think about that for a second. If your soul is in your stomach, which is where your earth brain is, that processes all of reality, what happens when it starts to be encoded with resentment? Now, all of the things that you want to feel and be happy about, you resent instead, because you can't process it. You have to come up with a reason why it's not okay, instead of just being like, oh, cool, that's awesome. My favorite thing, I posted this, I think it was like a few years ago. It was during 2020. I remember that. And I got so much blowback, so much hatred. And all I said was, wow, I can't believe this person's giving away billions of dollars to help the world. And they were like, but do you know who this person is? Whoa. And I was like, I don't really care. The fact that they're giving billions of dollars to help people, I don't even care if it's a play to save money or a tax write-off or a shelter. What matters is some people, I don't know how many, are going to be supported. And I celebrate that. All
Yeah,
this is your story around
that's it.
this.
Well, and that's, when I realized or learned what triggering was, right? And Dr. John DeMartini is a really dear friend of ours. We happened to be able to meet him when Hanalei, my daughter, was speaking on a stage, and he really transformed the way that we thought, because he was asking Hanalei, because my daughter is now 16, but when she was 8 years old, she was discovered amazing artist and a fashion designer. And by the time she was 11, she had her first fashion company, sustainable fashion brand. She made her first 6 figures at 12. And now we know, we didn't realize the amount of pressure, right? She was just in her zone, just doing her thing. However, as you grow, all of a sudden, all of this like reality of, am I better than them? Are they better than me? And these judgments started to come in. People start bringing these judgments. Well, Dr. John was there and he's like, guys, I want to talk with you because I'm so enamored on how you've brought up Hanalei. She's been homeschooled. She's traveled 50 some countries, around the world. And we left when she was 1 from the United States. And he's like, what she's doing right now is triggering so many people because she's living, right, what she's just being. We asked her, what do you want to be now, instead of what do you want to be when you grow up, which is a very different question, right? Which gave her a whole different perspective on what she could do. And I didn't really understand or necessarily realize when people were like, oh, you're triggering me. And I was like, well, yeah, because they do something wrong. No, it was when you're triggered by someone, it's because what you're seeing in them is what you're seeing within yourself. You're just not willing to actually either address it or love it or own it. Right. And so he's like, so all these people, because she went to a London Fashion Week and it was like almost destroying. These people were ugly. Like they were jealous. They were mean. Here's this little beautiful 12-year-old walking around, like she's creating these clothes. She's getting all this attention, but these adults are like triggered and they're like upset about it. And it's like, wow. And then all of a sudden, Hanalei started to do the same. She started to look at others and be like, I can't be like that. And all of a sudden she got fearful. Like she couldn't do it. Right. And Dr. Johns, he's like, no, it's triggering is great because it's like our unveiling of really, truly what we're not willing to face. And like recently we were at an event in Nepal and, I'm out there. Like I did my talk and it was like, whoa, and one of the guys like, oh, you were so triggering for that guy. And I was like, great. I'm very polarizing. Yeah. Like, it's awesome, And he's like, oh, but you were big on his nervous system. I go, great. Maybe that's what he should work on. And then the person that said this was like, I didn't even see it that way. Right. And so when we understand that, triggering is great because it's like our wisdom showing up and saying, hey, take a look. Maybe we should work on this,
Exactly. It's that invitation, right? Like I've been teaching triggering for years to people, like how important it was. I literally paid somebody to trigger me for years in my life. Seriously, I'd go and he would like come up with anything he could do to lie to me to unlock a certain part so that I would like be like in this space is like, now that you're here, this is good because you're not out there like this.
That's it.
I'll resolve it. What's actually the cause? Why is this going the way that it was? And I think that we often forget that belonging has to go away for self-actualization. And so what triggering does is it triggers us in our sense of belonging. It's one of the reasons why echo chambers are sold in millions right now. Literally, it's like, hey, all you have to do is buy this thing and you're part of this group. And now that you're part of this group, you can self-actualize. And it's like, oh, really? Cool. So I can self-actualize in this group. What about outside the group?
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
No. Actually, you got to keep paying to stay in this group so that you can actualize. But like, I don't feel like I'm actualizing. I actually feel like now that I've been paying, I can't even afford it over my head. And so now I don't even feel like I belong because I can't afford the thing. And now I'm actually lower than I was. Yeah. And that's the upside down pyramid, right? Yeah. The struggle is that the upside down pyramid has a point to it. Whereas the actual truth of the pyramid is that it's missing the capstone for a reason because self-actualization is invisible. It's something that is very well felt, 100%. Everyone can feel self-actualized. If you speak to somebody that's self-actualized, the presence they carry, because they don't care. They literally don't. And there's a reason they don't care, because they don't need to belong. But that doesn't mean that they don't have kindness either. And that's the struggle, right? We often look at empathy as pity. And because we do this, we actually have learned to pity people, which is to put weight on their soul. Most people won't tell you this, but when you pity somebody, you're putting weight on their soul. You're digging a little bit more in their hole for them so that they can feel good about themselves because somebody else is digging with them. Misery loves company, and that's how echo chambers are formed. But triggers are ropes thrown in that hole. And what happens is that rope is a glow rope. So it's like glow sticks that have been shattered so that you get this beautiful bright light, and it's in the hole, and they're like, no, I didn't know I was in a hole. I don't want to know that I was in a hole. And then they throw the rope back up, and you're like, in any world, if this were to happen in any world, like let's pretend that we're in reality, because we aren't anywhere near reality these days. But let's pretend we're in reality, right? And you're in a hole and you're stuck, and somebody throws a rope down. You're going to celebrate that person. You're going to be like, oh, thank you so much for doing that. In this world, we try to get them canceled. Because to stay in that hole, as long as we don't know we're in that hole, is glorious. The problem is it started raining recently. And all those holes are starting to fill up. And the coolest part about this is they're floating now, and they can't not know they're in that hole. And eventually they're going to have to get into the real world again. And when they get into the real world again, they're going to see all these glow ropes that are laying around that they threw back up. And they're going to have to sit there with that and make a decision of whether they're going to move forward or not. And I think that year of clarity is coming next year. Because I look at where we are and the flood proportion of spiritual wisdom that's coming in just in pure data and information, the amount of people that are seeking out truth, that are willing to unmask, that are willing to be real and authentic. And then this biggest research just came out about authenticity being 4,000 times stronger than love. Well, now where are we at? Well, we have science catching up. We have the quantum mechanical understanding. We have all these new tools and techniques coming out. We have all these people that are saying, oh, you know what? Legacy media is dead. I'm done with this. This is not who I am. It costs too much to be something I'm not. Yeah. And so you have all these people like you stepping up that are like, hey, I'm just going to be real now because I've lived and I know that what I've lived has helped people. And so what we have is we have this moment in time where the waters are rising, and the water is that reflection. It's that power that we've been looking for our whole lives. And eventually, I think by about 6 months into next year, we're going to have to look at those glow ropes, and we're going to have to decide whether or not it was okay that we gave away that rope back then. And I'll tell you, a spoiler alert for everyone out there, it was 100% okay. Because if you can't deal with something, that's okay. But it's on you, not that person that threw the rope. So we got to stop canceling people and start really feeling what we feel and acknowledge that.
Oh, more than ever. Thank you for that. You kind of, as you were speaking, you're bringing up some, moments, relatable moments, right, in my life, because when I'm always out front and bold. And I remember even, just even recently, you start to get a little bit more quiet because you're starting to trigger so many people. I have triggered so many people, right? And I'm like, come on, come with me. And all of a sudden people are with me, and then they start getting, right? They start questioning themselves. Right? And then instead of, like diving more deeply into that to illuminate themselves, they start like either, saying negative things or, pressing down the one that was beaming. And even the strong ones, like I consider myself strong. I know who I am. I am out there. I'm authentic. Even the last couple of years I had a big challenge because I took a very big risk, and I went and I put myself out there, TV shows, and, I'm hosting a show at NASDAQ. And man, what you want to talk about trying to bring light into a dark industry. Of course, I backed out of that one quickly because the moment I walk in, I'm like, okay, I'm really going to do something. The people that were comfortable with, let's say I'm using myself as an example, like my authenticity and where I was right at that moment, the people that were comfortable there got really triggered because all of a sudden this is quantum steps. Like I'm still shit, right? All of a sudden I'm doing stuff bigger than I ever thought I could do. But then it's like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, why aren't they supporting? What's going on? And I started to then kind of back up a little bit, right? And so even like the strongest leader can fall back if their troops aren't also looking at the things, right, that are scary for them, that are triggering for them, right? And then I realized, as, let's say, the leader, if you will, of myself, I wasn't even being as true to myself. So what happened is everyone started to question. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa. And I back up. I'm like, hold on. No more. Your fears are not mine. Mine are mine. I'm going to face mine. If you want to come with me in this fear brigade where we're like, let's come bring my fear with us. Now we can have some conversation. I can handle hard talks. I can handle hard stuff. And those are the kind of talks when you see pure transformation, like the transmission is like so strong. And at that point, you can do nothing but be honest and be open and be right. And so when someone's triggered, you're like, let's talk about that. Like, right? What are you going to do with that? Like, what are we going to do? Because I got something in me that you love, or you got something in me that I love. I was just afraid to talk about it, you know? And I think that's really what you're talking about, is like where we're going as the water comes up. All of a sudden, all that stuff is going to come out, and we're going to have to go, whoa, we're all here. Like there's a quote that I really love, and it kind of goes in many different scenarios. Like, you know who's been swimming naked when the tide comes out. Right. And it aligns with so many different scenarios of life, you know, like when you're raw and you're naked, like, whoa, you could either be faking it really, really well, like, look at me, you know, but then the moment the tide comes out or the water comes up in those holes, you are naked, and you got to stand there and go, okay, let's do this. I'm pure. I'm authentic. This is me. Or you're like, right? You're scared.
Exactly.
So, you know,
and then you add the next dimension to that, right? Like, you're not only coming out of this hole and you are naked because no one had clothes on in those holes. That's why they hid in the darkness. But now you have all these glow ropes that have sat there. So you're coming out to a glow show. You know what I'm saying? Welcome to 2024. The glow show has begun.
Yeah. Well, maybe we need to have
and the light kicks on at that time. That was hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, it just, I love this conversation that you're creating in the, you know, the space, because the more I think our communities and those are around us, and let's say the world, can hear that we're all the same.
Yeah.
We just took a little bit stronger step to get through it, and that they can get through it too, is that's where you were talking earlier about this permission. Like, we're giving people permission to be okay, be messy, but stand in that, because that is where, you know, like leadership, success, all those things come from, because you're not measuring yourself against anything anymore. You know, like I was talking about this the other day. I'm like, success is obviously what we create, right? It's ours. Some people measure themselves against all these different things. I'm like, guys, the moment you're actually true and real, it comes at you in like quantum, right? And that's where you're like, oh, but how can they be successful and I'm not, but I'm doing all the right things? Like, because you're not aligned. Like, if you're not aligned, the universe is going to give you more of what you're asking for. So you could be standing in front of a beautiful car, selling and saying the right words, but if you are truly not aligned with who you are, the universe is like, I'm just going to give you more of that inauthenticity, which is not abundant, you know? But if you're like, hey, so I am, this is what I got. So, oh, let's give you more of that, because you're one of those guiding lights that we have, and we want you to have more resources, whatever those are, so that you can help more. Like, it's a universal law. It's actually simple when we really think about it. We make it so hard.
We don't make it easy, but it's always simple. Literally, my favorite universal law is no one is free until each are free, and all are freeing each other. And so when you think of it from that perspective, it's like, well, I want to be free, and I know that you want to be free. So what in between us is telling us otherwise? Let's have a conversation about that. Because when we start to have a conversation about that, we'll start to see that there were other influences to the fact that we're upset with each other. There are other things that are relating from the past into the present that are keeping us from being able to connect. And I think that that's one of the biggest struggles this next year is going to bring us, is we're coming into the year of connection, where literally it's the year of clarity. So the first 6 months of the year is about inner clarity, and the last 6 months is about external clarity. So two different illumination points. And this process to really examine that, like, be like, okay, well, what in me is not clear? Okay, cool. Because think about this, like, for the longest time, we've been trying to clean up the world around us. And what happens is we're the poison that's being put into the world around us. So We're like cleaning up the poison. We're so proud of ourselves. We're virtue signaling. We're doing everything, taking Instagram videos of it. We're doing all we can to show that we cleaned up this thing.
Yeah.
But the reason that we had to clean up this thing was so that we could feel good about ourselves. So what are we going to do? We're going to go, once the video is off, and go create another thing to go clean up. Now, this is all at a quantum level, hopefully. Some people are doing it personally, but at a quantum level, we're creating problems so that we can solve them, so that we can be the hero, so that we can belong or be worshipped. Really, it doesn't really matter which, because they're both a form of belonging. But the reality is, the problem is us. And if we can resolve that problem, if we can truly become the solution, then what happens is we become a walking solution. And yes, we will trigger the whole world around us, but we'll trigger them into truth. And not because we need to be their hero or their savior, but rather because we want a cleaner world. We want the stream to run through us. The biggest struggle I think that we have as adults, and this is something that is your daughter's actually about to come into this age group where this is going to be one of those things, but we, after 21 years, we stabilize this self that we are. And we go through this 7-year period from 21 to 28, where we start to actually have to look at what we stabilized. And some people, they come out of it, they actually go, whoa, okay. And then they just start this radical transformation for the rest of their life. Other people, they dig down. And that's one of the reasons why this was such an important show. Like the Frozen in Time, the whole purpose of this is because inside that hole, what you don't know is you didn't start in one. And as you started to pack on trauma, as you started to weigh down your bag with things that you thought you had to carry for the rest of your life, it started to put the weight and pressure, and that hole formed. And as the light of truth came down, it wet the soil, but so that you could know that you were sinking in quicksand. And you chose not to get out. You chose to continue to stay. You doubled down. And so that's why you're frozen in time. And that's why the water's rising, because we're melting together. As we melt together, what happens? Well, our hole starts to fill with water, and then it overflows eventually, because everybody's holes are different depths. But again, this doesn't make you better than or more than or less than. We all chose what we chose so that we could do what we came to do. But what happens when my cup overflows is it starts to flow into your cup, and then it starts to flow into your cup until we're all above surface. And yeah, we're going to be naked, and we're going to be looking at the glow, and we're going to be like, okay, and we're gonna go through reconcile. We are going to have to acknowledge what we've chosen not to do and what we have chosen to do. But by the end of 2024, when we start 2025, I see a brand new world with people being themselves based on real, authentic movement. And I'm seeing it in the inventor community. I'm seeing it in the spiritual community. I'm seeing it in even the government, which is wild to me, to be honest. Like seeing more truth in the government, I'm like, wow, we're actually here. We're arriving at this point. They're making real decisions at this point, you know? And this is because we've arrived. We just don't know it because we're still in holes and we can't see. But the sun is coming and the water has melted, and we are going to be raising up. That's why this campaign ends on the 13th of January, is because we are ready to begin to move, and we are no longer needing to be hardened, but rather liquid, because what comes next, none of us are prepared for. We don't know anything about it. And also, we were born for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we're not given anything that we actually can't handle. And I think that it's gotten, to the point where it's almost has been acceptable to think that I can't handle it. And which is why we have such a massive, mental health, epidemic. We've got, so many people that are, letting their lives go because they're just like, there's no hope anymore. But that's what they want you to think, right? They don't want us to believe and bring our community together. And I think we also need to be aware of each other, knowing that, yes, we are using these social media platforms, right? But they don't necessarily want us to talk like this, right?
Oh, they definitely don't want us to talk like this.
I mean, someone just wrote, Facebook blocked me from Harding, like too much goodness, right? However, if we are aware, like I'm in the branding and PR world. Like I started before social media, was cool, right? Utilizing this interweb to share our message and to share our story authentically. And that's what our company's been built on. However, what I see is so often like people start to sway, and then now we are using these platforms as a measurement to our validity or to
Yeah.
what we are. However, when we know, like it's just like once you know, you can't unknow it. Use these platforms to move this message, because
Yeah.
especially like I always think of like my daughter, right? That generation, those kids are, they are at like they're under siege half the time, you
Yeah.
know? And if we can understand that these platforms are not necessarily what they want us to use it for, but we use it for the good, which is why I love this show. I'm like, it's the day before, Christmas Eve over here. I'm like, whenever he can make, if he can make this time, let's do it. Because I I've never given myself the space like this to really let it out, and sometimes it takes someone to give permission to say, "Hey, let's just have this conversation." And the more we do it, especially in these type of platforms, now into this new 2024 and 2025, now we're walking and holding hands together. Like
Yeah.
you and I got to meet last year in June, or this year in June, at the book launch that we did. It was the first time I ever met you. I was like, oh my gosh, like we still have your clove oil, orange clove oil. My daughter and I, we always think of you. And I'm like, I told Hanalei today, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be on with Jason today, It's like, man, even though we can be far, far, far away, the moment we align and the messages align, now like we can use these platforms, we are connected even though we're far, far away, and now we're just bringing more light to everywhere that we go. And I think that's what I'm excited about for this next year, is just that, just bringing the truth out, and those that are using this platform for real message. And that's a big goal that I have, or not goal, an intention, right? Because I always use the I am manifestation equation, which is I intention plus a attention equals manifestation. So my intention is to really come out and bring more of not just what people want to hear, which they want to hear from me marketing. They want to hear from me, like, what do I do next in my business? And how do I get this way? No, my intention is to really bring more truth out into using my platforms, giving that a lot of attention. And of course, then now we're manifesting this connection of truth seekers, like we've all been kind of crawling, and I think it's time for us to stand. you
Yeah.
know you know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm always that truth seeker. Sometimes I'm like, I'm kind of crawling around to the right people, and then you're like, actually no, we can fucking stand now, because now everyone's ready to hold hands and do it together, no matter where we are around the world.
That's true. And we're team humanity regardless.
Exactly.
Even the people that are in the holes that don't know it yet, they're team humanity. You can't change it, And I think that mentality of acknowledgement, like what you do matters. Every moment you melt is a little bit more water that helps fill the hole of the next person.
Mm.
And that is why this was the last campaign I'm doing, right? As me, Team Humanity, MTVO team is going to be taking over, which is my organization that's actually 7 years old now. And we're in this phase where it's like it's time for a person to step back and the team to come online. And I'm so happy that we're finally at this point in my life where it's time for the team to come together. And I know that team, that superhero team, it's coming online. I'm finding more and more amazing people that want the same thing. And all we want is a better world faster, right? Like we can all rally behind that, you would think. But then there's groups out there that don't want a better world faster. They want status quo. They want less for everyone else and more for them. And I'm just not aligning with that. So the way I look at the world is if it's not a win-win, then it's not for me. And as we continue to go forward from that perspective, it's winning for me, it's winning for you, and we are working together to improve, the world will change. And like I said before, the inventors and the people I've talked to and the technology that's going to be coming out of these next few years, it's radically going to change the game. And the status quo, the way that we understand energy, the way that we understand power, the way that we understand all of it, it's radically changing. We already have hydrogen cars in Europe, which they've done a really good job to block it out, but they're actually on the road. And when they drive, they're actually fixing the atmosphere as they drive instead of hurting it. This is so cool. They're creating biophotons as they drive, creating living light molecules, and they drive on water. Zero emissions. They already exist. It's already a company. I think it's called Nexo or something like that. And it's already out. Like they already have cars on the road. They're already doing it. In America, we don't have them yet, but we're going to. We have entire nations that are working on hydrogen solutions for the power source. We are
Mhm.
in that next stage of evolution because we're starting to come from a place where we have to be win-win. And I love those kind of conversations. It's one of my favorite things is as an inventor, just sit down with other inventors and to come together in that way. And what I'm seeing is the fear that used to be in the inventor circle is dissipating to the point where people are starting to get brave. And groups like Porsche, who pushed through hydrogen technology for vehicles, it was a fuel system, but still they pushed through it. They pioneered it through the madness. We're getting to that point. And it's so important that we start to realize what resources look like for us. Because that cost, that spiritual cost we started out talking about at the beginning, that's a real thing. Resentment will kill you. It's so bad for your health. It's not even funny. Actually, I don't think there's anything worse than resentment for your health because stress comes from resentment. Everything
Yeah.
that I know of comes from resentment. That's a negative.
Well, it's yeah, absolutely. And I remember, I didn't even share this earlier, but in 2004, I had like a really shifted moment in my life, which is when I became an entrepreneur. Is I was in corporate, and crazy enough, I actually worked for GlaxoSmithKline Pharmaceuticals. I was a corporate executive for the company, and I'm thinking, here I am doing all this, growth. Here I'm making it. And I started looking at these clinical trials, and I'm like questioning everything. Like, you need to be quiet, or you're not going to keep this job. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
this is not. None of this is significant. I'm questioning, right? Well, I had a breaking moment, and I witnessed a woman put a 6-week-old baby in daycare who was a brand new mom. I was late. She was late for a meeting, and my boss like literally threw her on the cross for being late for this meeting. And I was like, whoa, hold on. This is not who I want to be for women. It's not who I like. I had this like body, shift. And this, when I told my husband, Brian, I'm like, I'm quitting my job. I can't be part of this. But more importantly, I can't do this, right, to my future generations, my daughter, who wasn't even around yet. And that's when I started really tapping into learning about, like, I watched a documentary of Steve Jobs, and he said, if you're not understanding the internet, the digital world, you'll be left in the dark in 10 years. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to start figuring this thing out. I started working with Perry Marshall, who's like pretty much wrote the algorithm for Google, blah, blah, blah. I'm sharing this because we built our company up. I became an entrepreneur, retired my husband, Brian, as a robotics engineer. Here, all of a sudden, we're building this beautiful life. And then we invested in 07, 08. We were part of the largest fraud in the United States of real estate. So here we go from, here's this family, like, we really built it up corporate, we were doing really well and started to invest so we could have this child. I quit my job, build this, online company to help people share their voice before social media was a thing. And we signed our name on $26 million homes, and the developer used our name, sucked all the money out of the homes, and never built them. I was pregnant. So we signed off the construction loan, and he sucked the money out. Now, you want to talk about having a very big reality shift of now who am I? Now what are we doing, right? And we lost everything, and we left with $12,862.72 to our name, with a vision and a vow to never put Hanalei in daycare. She had just been born, which is why we've been on the road for 16 years. But you're talking about resentment, and I'm getting to the point where resentment came in, because we were so, like, we were distraught. Like, here we go. We thought we made it, right? To now everything's gone. Our egos were completely left at the door, because now we went from millions in the bank to 12,000. This is all we got left. Like, this is all we have left. And we, on November 25th was our 15-year anniversary of, 15-year anniversary of leaving everything behind and starting completely over. Just this last November. But the process of that, right, is, okay, yeah, we've accepted it. Like, you go through all the process of like grief, and I'm like, oh my God, I have this baby. What have I done? Like, what, all these questions. But what came and allowed us to get through this, and which is why I know I'm here today, stronger, more authentic, more real, because it was just one of those moments. Here, we lived in San Diego, and Deepak Chopra used to live in, right behind us, kind of Mount Soledad area in La Jolla, and he had Deepak Radio on Saturdays. I don't know if you ever remember any of this. It was back in 2008, Deepak Radio, and Wayne Dyer was there on the show that day. And he was launching the book, Change Your Thoughts, Change Your World. Or Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, something like that. And we're like, I'm calling. I'm going to ask Deepak, how do I get through this? Like, how do I change my thoughts? I need to change my thoughts. Like, it was like messy, right? And of course, who would ever imagine getting through to Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer? I have the recording. You can search it on YouTube, like Rhonda's Ensemble Family, Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer. And I have the recording of this conversation. And I call, and it was like, Rhonda, you're on with Deepak. And I'm like, my world like, like, okay, universe, you're right. I did ask for this, but oh my gosh, and I'm like, okay. And I just remember that moment. And I asked the question, I said, you know how good things happen to bad people? Like, this is what's happened. We can't get through it. And I kept using this it. Like, we think we are, we're meditating, we're this, we're in personal development. We just can't get through it. Like it. And Wayne Dyer goes, well, it's because you're just giving it this name. It is controlling you. And he said, do you ever consider the moment that you just forgive this guy, because it was this guy and this thing, it was so big for us that we were so resentful for all the things that it did to us. And he goes, you guys are just so connected to being right and it being wrong. You just can't even see through it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, Wayne Dyer, I am not cool with this conversation right now. You're telling me to forgive this man. I'm holding this baby. I'm in this big, huge house. It's no longer mine. And I have nothing left to show for it. And he goes, you're giving it too much power. Forgive and move on. The moment didn't feel like I could ever do that, but it took us a little bit of a process. And boom, within 6 months, we let it go. We forgave that guy and went, oh, wait, we are the ones that actually signed our name. It was us. We did it. And the moment we actually forgave that man, that was like, boom, boom. It was like the universe aligned for us because we were clear from it. It was no longer part of our consciousness anymore. And that's when it was like, it was quantum steps. Like the house got sold. We put everything on our front yard and sold it. And we're like, okay, we got $12,000. Freaking, we can do this. We have a business. Like, we're already online. We can go travel. And we left November, and that changed the way that we were handling every single it in our life.
Yeah.
Because that it was just showing up for us to go, okay, thank you. I forgive you. And now you can move on. And if we can use simple analogies like that, we don't have to get so confusing on how do I handle my trauma or how do I handle the trigger, the shadow. Like sometimes it gets confusing. We just go, oh, actually, it's not there anymore. Forgive it.
Forgive it. Exactly. Yeah. I think for the longest time, people have always thought that forgiveness is for the other person.
Right.
That's the big problem in the math of forgiveness, is that if it's for you, but I hate you, I can't forgive you. But if it's for me, then I can do that. And now I have clarity to actually forgive you for you. Right. But there's this whole process with it where whenever you resent somebody else, you're drinking the poison hoping they will die. And resentment will kill you outright. It will kill your dreams. It will kill your hopes. It will kill everything.
It'll eat you up.
And it does. And so many people don't let it go. But the thing is, you don't gain anything for holding resentment other than weight. And if you want to be weight in somebody else's life and everybody's life that you've ever been part of, if you want to be the person that weighs them down, then continue to resent. But if you want to be somebody that people want to be around, that actually uplifts them, that helps them to see things differently, manage your resentment reserve and work on getting it to zero. Because I guarantee you right now, one of the most beautiful things you will do before this year ends is write a list of every person you resent and at least spend a few minutes every day just doing your best to forgive them. Even if it's just, okay, I can forgive the way they smelled, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the whole thing. You don't have to forgive them for the big thing, but start to work towards, through incremental growth, forgiveness until you can forgive the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if you can do that before the year ends, you'll start 2024 already a little higher out of your hole. Maybe even you'll be staring in the glow. We don't know.
Well, you'll be floating because you're so much lighter.
Exactly.
I love this. Anthony, thanks for that. Anthony just pulled up the link from YouTube on that conversation. It's simple yet very profound. And but I that's the one thing, like resentment is one of the hardest things to even see or to face because it just hurts. It is so heavy, and if we can, yeah, I love that. If we can just drop any of those forms of resentment, I mean, man, that's the real healing. That's really where the healing is at, right? Letting it all go, and just really seeing through the light. Because I tell you, man, if we go into 2024 carrying any of the things that we did wrong this year, like let it go and start off so free and fresh. So it's funny, our family, we always go on holiday in January. We go on holiday.
Brilliant
And
idea.
everyone's like, okay, it's ending now. It's time to lock down and start the year. I'm like, nope, we're going to Japan to go snowboarding because we're starting off the year so pumped and so light and so excited that just sets up the whole year.
There you go.
You know,
That's a great way to start because you're choosing to start the year in the best possible place so that where do you go from there? Only up.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Indeed. Snowboarding though in Japan. Wow, that sounds incredible.
Lots of snow there. So much snow. And it's dumping right now. And it's Bali. It's hot right now. We're in our summer. So it's like super humid and it's nice and it's rainy season. So it's nice to get out. I mean, it's a rainy season for most people is like glorious because they come to Bali to vacation. But for us, we're like, okay, it's rainy season, meaning there's more humidity and more moisture in the cold. So we usually leave and board it up for 3 months because we've got Japan in January. Then we go to in February, we'll be in Europe, in London. My daughter wants to maybe go to school somewhere in Europe, in Italy, London, and then we go to Antarctica in March. So that's going to be our 7th continent.
Have you been to Antarctica before?
No, this is our 7th continent to ever touch. And my daughter will hit all 7.
Wow.
It was one of those pure manifestations. We've been wanting to go for so many years. We keep going, okay, we're going to do it. It just didn't work out right. And things weren't coming out. And then sure enough, someone said, Rhonda, I want you to co-host with us. We have a week in a boat or 12 days in a boat in Antarctica. Do you want to help co-host an event? I was like, did you just say Antarctica? Bring it. And so we're co-hosting an event called the Stewardship. There's only 100 cabins. There's still, I think, 20 cabins open. So if anyone feels the pull and desire to go to Antarctica, it's going to be beautiful. And we have actually a 2-for-1 kind of opportunity, which because I'm a host, I can bring more people. So this is where some really amazing change makers are going to come together and look at the stewardship of this new earth and how we can navigate together and bring new, not only mindset and new things to the world, but amazing place like Antarctica. So
that's incredible.
Yeah,
Antarctica of all places to bring the stewards of the new earth. There's some secrets there as well with Antarctica. So that's hilarious to me from my understanding of Antarctica, which I can't share publicly. But yes, that's incredible. So very, 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 very good job.
We need to have you there. I'll send you some info. Bring your vibe. Yeah, but it's fun. I'm excited for what's taking place, and like just moving through this new year with just pure clarity and more authenticity and a stronger intention to bring more light into the world and utilizing these forms and these type of platforms to do it. So thank you for really bringing this to the to the surface.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook is one of those things where like most people are like, Jason, why are you on social media? Like everything you teach tells us to get off social media. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. If all of the people that are actually good people step away from something because the thing is perceived as bad, it's a tool. Again, the platform is not evil or good. It's just a platform. Mm-hmm. Then what happens is they win. And for me, I just don't feel good about that. So I'm on social media because I like to be a light where there wasn't one. That's like my thing in life is create a choice where there isn't one. If you can do that, it doesn't matter if it's the right choice, the wrong choice, all that, that's, for people to figure out. but create a choice where there wasn't one. Because if you can do that, you've changed the world. And why are we here? To change the world. Unless you like the world where it is, which I personally don't. So I'm here to change it, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that through being me as best I can and falling on every log between me and my goal so that other people don't have to. And I have publicly fallen on many logs, and I will continue to do so because at least I can mark that log for the next person.
That's it.
And
That's it.
that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Like, I just got out of my hole. There was a few glow ropes because I wasn't always the best person. Like, I've made mistakes just like everybody else. And then I started walking. And instead of being smart and taking the glow ropes with me, I decided to walk into the darkness. And I tripped on so many logs.
So many.
But it was okay. It was okay. There's a little trail of blood that people can follow if they want. Some thorns that I very clearly marked for people. And that's part of the process is figuring out what's real. And what's real and what's authentic isn't necessarily what people tell you is. And the most valuable advice that I can give anyone in this world is just because somebody says it's true doesn't mean it is for you. And if somebody gives you advice, it's great advice, right? It doesn't matter whether it's right advice or wrong advice. But if they give you advice, but you don't make it your own advice, it's always going to be wrong regardless because you're empowering their decision over your own. But if you take the time to go, but is this true for me? And you get a yes, and then you honor that, now you're using your own advice. You brought yourself in as your own go-to. And this is the key to self-actualization. For anyone that's standing on the top of the pyramid, trying to figure out how to fly up into that self-actualization, that mystical category that nobody really ever thinks is possible. The key is be your own go-to and be willing to fall because you don't learn to fly on the first try. Never, ever. Look at nature. Nature is the greatest example to teach you anything about life and real life. Birds, they free fall for a while. They have all kinds of problems before they learn to fly. Do you expect as a human being who doesn't even have wings yet to do it on your first try? Good luck. But when you fall and they come after you, because they will, this is the thing the other people don't tell you. When you fly to self-actualization and you get halfway there but you fall and you hit that pyramid hard, everyone tries to pull you down. They come up with every reason why you should not do it again and all the other things. And the pain that you have from falling, that's hard to overcome. But if you take on their beliefs over why you fell, you're never going to fly again.
We see this often too, right? Like you feel like, oh, I'm going for something and then I fail. And, others, you stay where others see you at because now you're questioning yourself. I mean, that's when we decided to leave and we said, we're taking our daughter, we're leaving the USA. The amount of people were like, this is irresponsible. Like, this is not, like you guys, this is wrong. You're putting this child in, a wrong environment. I mean, my daughter's never been, jabbed ever. And which was also a big decision because when she was born, I said, don't touch this human's body. Like, don't put anything in there. And I was almost taken to protective services because I was being a poor mother. That was that was like more of our motivation to get out. And of course, universe and God was going, okay, guys, we're going to let you lose everything because that was part of your mask. That's gone. Now you're going to get showed up that you're being questioned and forced to make big decisions that are going to help shift the trajectory of your life and your world. And it would have been easy to give in, to go, hey, okay, sorry. Yep. Right. Instead, the hard stuff is actually what really puts us into the space that we really truly know that we can thrive in. So the hard decisions, which is dealing with the traumas, facing it, stepping through all of that, and being a stand when others are trying to push you down. And I think that sometimes is one of our hardest roles to play is to keep stepping in and then, oh, it doesn't go so good. They're like, I told you. They're right. Giving in. It's like, actually, no, thank you, but I'm not available for that. And, that's where, as leaders of this new earth, that's where we're truly going to thrive. And it doesn't mean that we're the strongest. It just means we know we're taking our stand. And we're, like you were saying earlier, we're pillars. Like, there's no one's going to shake me. I don't care who or what. I don't care how much you've gone through. You're not going to rattle my chain. I will rattle yours by staying bold for you, and I'm here for you, but darn it, there's this pillar is not getting pushed over, but sometimes it does get a little wiggly and you're like, well, come
Yeah.
back to source, come back to what that beam was built on. And that's when we can just like really move mountains and shift the way people are seeing the world that they live in, because it's beautiful. I love our world. It's beautiful.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it's going to get more beautiful if we keep showing up with beauty. you know, that's the part that excites me the most. I'm so passionate about like just being, just being is better than not being at all or not knowing, and that's, I think the more we stay in the same conversation and really stand strong in who we are, we're going to keep growing. And that's yeah, I'm just so grateful for this conversation today. Like you got me in this like, yeah, come on, it's almost
You're super
Christmas,
pumped.
you know? Yeah,
And
I
it's
love
the morning for you, so you've got the whole
I
day
got
to
the
be
whole
this.
day. I'm gonna high vibe on this all day today.
That's perfect. So we're coming up to the 90 minutes now, and I just want to give you the platform to just say like what you want to say. Like, what are some things that can help people prepare for this new year or help them through this new year that we're coming into? Like, how do we get to where you are now in this state where you're like, okay, I'm gonna stand, like I'm gonna be a pillar. I'm ready to make that commitment to myself, because it's not to others, to
Mm,
myself, to stand where everybody else might be kneeling or falling or whatever it
mm.
is. I'm going to stand. How do we get there?
I ask myself these questions every single, consistently throughout the year, but always at the end of the year. Is what I'm doing right now going to move me closer or farther away from the things that are not serving me and closer to shifting, what I want in my life? And are the things that I'm doing, this is one for me specifically, is what I'm doing now a example and a beam for my daughter to become the next generation of change makers, right? So is what I'm doing now bringing me closer? And it's not really a goal. It's more closer to how I want to see the world. And is my actions and the decisions I take going to be a beam for my daughter to become the next generation and to really be the next generation of leaders? And I ask these two questions and they're quite simple, yet I always come up with like the list of areas that I might have compromised.
Yeah.
Right. And so I write this list of where have I compromised these questions. And then I just reshift and recheck myself consistently, because like when we compromise values, goals, or what we actually want, we're not hurting ourselves, we're hurting the world, because we are so meant to be that the healthiest, the happiest, the biggest being. But when we compromise, and for me, it's always like, especially in business, like, are we compromising the values that we hold, our core values? And in my line of work, I have to turn so many people away now, because if they're not aligned with my values, then that's hurting my trajectory. That bigger goal that I've got in intention, if I'm aligning with someone's messy values, then it makes me messy. And that was something I had to get really clear with, and this last year we actually dropped about 70% of our client base.
Wow.
70%. And I was scared. I'm like, oh man, this is not going to be good. We shrunk down our employees. We just said, look, no longer, this is, they're paying, but their money was dirty. And so I look at those two questions, and then I look at alignment of my values. And when I do this, it's like we call it the money line in our company, like the heartbeat of our company. This is the heartbeat, and this is where the money lines are. How I pay my employees, what they do with the money, like what are their alignment?
Yep.
When I've got vendors I pay, like how are they using it? Our clients, when the money comes in the heartbeat, is it pumping the heart, or is it actually dangerous? And when we started mapping out this money line of the heartbeat of our company, there was so much dirty veins coming into my company. I'm
Yep.
like, whoa. And we had to get very real. And it's that's when the hard, making these hard decisions and hard conversations. So that's at the end of the year, it's like we go through the money line, we ask ourselves really hard questions, and we write down where have we compromised all of those values that we had this year, and how are we going to get ourselves back in alignment so that our pillar is strong. And I know every year I do that, our company gets better,
Yep.
we get better, right? Our work gets better, and then it's almost like life business becomes so much more fun. Like we were at the event, like we do the Women Gone Wild book launch, and it's like we got another book coming up in June, the intuition book of the series. It's like it's just so fun and exciting because everyone is there to shift and to help, and there's no unalignment. When you're aligned, when everything just naturally flows.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's where we close our year, and why we start our year on such a high note, doing the things that we love, working in the snow, and not being so overly professional in my office. I can take calls instead. I'm in the mountain with a freezing hand. But hey, let's talk for 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Like going back to the fun, and then clients love it because you're living. They want to live. You're helping them, expand their message and their brand, and who better to choose but someone that's living and, living their transmission, which for me, it's expansion. So I think I think that's a good one to leave on.
That's a great one to leave on. I call that quantum magnetism, by the way, because force breaks magnetism. So when you have the force, you're killing the magnetism. Well, the quantum magnetism is your connection with God that attracts everything that's divine for you, designed for you. That's where the most important thing is, and your money line practice is beautiful because of that. Like literally, like what you pay for and what they pay for matters, because it's your money that's circling through. And the reason that you receive that money is because you were being responsible for it. So if you're being irresponsible for it, then you're going to pay for that. And so that's beautiful that you were willing to do that. We actually just did the same thing. I went from 40 companies to 7 companies over this year. And we just brought them all under the right thing, got rid of the wrong people, did everything we needed to do, went from 125 contractors to 25 contractors in the course of the year. It was a brutal, painful year to clarify. But by the end of it, now I have a team that like I feel 100% I'm ready to rock. We just launched our website. Things are like, we're ready to go full speed ahead, and it's going to be the greatest year of our lives. And it's because we took the time to do the due diligence, to look under the hood, to clean up the things. So that was a great lesson to leave on. Thank you so much, Rhonda, for all this amazing wisdom and insight, and for being so real in this video. Like you just changed so many people's lives.
I received that. Thank you so much. And thank you for what you bring to the world. I mean, I've been watching these, and I know the people that you bring forward, and you are just bringing so much light. And it's just, thank you. You're a reminder to me to do more of the same.
Aw. Well, I look forward to doing more of the same with you in the new year.
Awesome. Right. Well, you have a great rest of your night. Bye, everyone. Be unstoppable and stay wild.
Bye, everybody.